Well, welcome to another edition of Board Chats presented by Concert Golf Partners here on Private Club Radio. This is where we get into the down and dirty about what happens behind the boardrooms. It's your little peek behind the curtain, if you will. And I'm joined by a couple of really great gentlemen. Obviously, Peter Nanula of Concert Golf Partners is with us as always. But in addition to that, we've got Jeff Dekruif and we've got Miles Tucker, two incredible general managers from Blackhawk Country Club. Jeff is the assistant general manager, and Miles is over at Hillcrest Country Club in Los Angeles. He's the COO. So, gents, welcome to Private Club Radio and Board Chats.
Thank you.
So, Peter, I want to start off with you. Obviously, we're in some pretty wild times right now with this. How are things going at Concert Golf?
Yeah, well, I think everything is a cliche now. These are unprecedented times, right? Like everyone said all the words that can be said about it. But
right.
I mean, fortunately, we're back open now at all 21 of our clubs, thanks to some recent reopenings. We had to make some difficult staff and cost cuts and things that other clubs are doing. But I think we did a pretty good job of taking care of our staff, because at the end of the day, as I'm sure Miles and Jeff will talk about, all you've really got is your staff. We're a people business, right? So, yeah. And then also we've gotten very involved in this clubshelp.org initiative that I think you guys have heard of, which has been a really cool way for our members and our staff to try to do something good for local hospitals, nursing homes. And so that's been kind of a silver lining. But I guess compared to your typical member-owned nonprofit club, be eager to hear about Miles and Jeff talking about their finances. Our clubs are all profitable because we're a for-profit entity. So if we're down 10% this year in profits, it's not the worst thing in the world. If you're a break-even club that budgeted to be zero this year and now you're down $250,000, $500,000, you're in a different spot, right? And so it's a weird time. But we're trying to take advantage of this downturn, Gabe, to accelerate some capital projects. Do some maintenance projects that normally are kind of disruptive to our golfers. Let's airify. Let's do some of that stuff now. Let's fix up that banquet room that was getting a little bit, delayed in terms of upkeep. But knock on wood, things are better for us than I would have expected 6 weeks ago.
Yeah. I was scared for everyone 6 weeks ago. How about in terms of any maybe some new purchases or anything like that that's happening?
Yeah. A couple months ago, we recapitalized a club in Atlanta, a great club called Country Club at Roswell. We're under contract now with a couple more member-owned clubs that, are thinking about capital projects and different things, and reached out to us in a more serious way in recent weeks just because of what's going on. They're all having emergency board meetings and wondering, what are we doing about capital and governance in a time like this, especially if this isn't going to be over anytime soon. So that's happening. And so knock wood, I think it's going to be a busy time for us the next couple of years, just like it was in the last kind of recession period. But I'm excited today just to have guys like Miles and Jeff on, who are at top-notch member-owned clubs, real industry leaders dealing with these issues. And I just feel like the audience, Gabe, that you and I talk to a lot, at member-owned clubs, would benefit from hearing how some of the leaders are dealing with this stuff in their boardrooms and in their kind of with their staffs.
Yeah, we got two superstars. So thanks for putting this all together, Peter. We'll start off with Miles Tucker. So Miles, you actually worked for one of Concert Golf's properties. Were they actually a Concert Golf property at the time, or did you come in before that happened?
I was in and out before Peter got there. It's one of my few regrets in my career. I feel very confident Peter and I could have done even better job with Sand Creek together than we did individually. But Sand Creek Country Club in Northwest Indiana was a fantastic club that's in the concert family now, 2,700 golf, stunning clubhouse, just a great community up there in Northwest Indiana. And I was fortunate enough to call that home for 3 years. So as I mentioned, I always thought it was my destiny to stay there, because Sand Creek opened on the day that I entered the planet. We share the same birthday. So if there's anyone from Sand Creek out there, we wish you well.
That's very cool. That's awesome. And catch folks up for those that don't know you, where you're at now and how you got into this pot.
So I'm at Hillcrest Country Club now in Los Angeles, and we're actually celebrating our centennial year this year. It's a year to remember in every way for us. We're the first club in Los Angeles that welcomed Jewish members, and our club's always been focused around the concepts of philanthropy and giving back, which has really served us well at this time. The club itself sits on 140 acres in southern Beverly Hills. We've got over 250 employees, 50 independent contractors. And when we reopen our Kyle Phillips golf course next week, having been closed for 6 weeks, our members just can't wait to get out there. They'd had less than a year on it because the golf course was closed for a year as we remodeled it for our centennial. We're more than a golf course, obviously. We have 10 tennis courts, running pool complex, gym and fitness facilities, urban farm. Frankly, what we're best known for is our food and our service. Food offerings are obviously, as we're starting to look at reopening, getting that right is absolutely critical for us, because while we expect there to be some in member behavior, people's willingness to go back out to restaurants and things, we have such a strong reputation with our members that we're confident we'll be the first door that they're knocking on. So we're working through that at the moment. We're obviously a platinum club and very proud of our membership.
Yeah, and one of the few clubs I've ever come across, if not the only one, that actually used to pay its members. You had to tell us about that story, Miles, for those that don't know that one.
Yeah, I can certainly get down to that. There's a couple of unique things about the club. One that's little known is that we were the first club on the West Coast to host a major. We hosted the 1929 PGA Championship. Not even Peter was at that one.
Wow.
Yeah, so little known fact about us. And in addition to that, a couple of other unique things. One, and I'm sure we'll touch about that, is the expectation that our members are philanthropic and that they give back to community. And it's a relentless standard that the club is very focused on, and again, gives a beautiful community that I'm fortunate enough to serve. But to your question, Gabe, we also have an oil operation at the club. We've had a drill site there since the 1950s. At one point in the 1950s, and I won't get into my personal outlook on the legal aspect of it as I see it, because I'm a club manager, I don't know anything about it. But me, it was a bit of a misappropriation of club funds when the members in the 50s took royalties from the oil field. And we've got a couple of member statements from that day and age that show dues and fees at $3.75, food and beverage spend at, $2.40, and oil revenues at $8. Here's your check for $3, which is, again, totally unique.
Peter, I'm a member at one of your clubs. Any chance I'll be seeing a check anytime soon?
Yeah, we still need to drill that oil well, I guess.
Well, right now, you're paying people to take the oil away, right?
Yeah.
Jeff, I want to introduce you to the show now. You are the assistant general manager and the CFO at Blackhawk Country Club. Please give us a little background on yourself.
Sure. I've been at Blackhawk a little over a year now. Prior to that, I worked for Troon for about 12 years in various finance capacities. I grew up in Arizona, so naturally joining the golf business. I've been around golf my whole life. Troon's world headquarters is in Scottsdale, and so my goal was always to work for Troon. So worked for them for 12 years, mostly at properties in the Phoenix market. I worked at their world headquarters for a few years in a regional finance capacity. And then prior to Blackhawk, I was for a couple of years over in Hilton Head, South Carolina at Belfair, which is a 36-hole residential community on the Platinum Club of America list as well. And kind of came out of left field. I wasn't looking to leave Belfair. I got a recruiting call from the team at Blackhawk. They were looking for an AGM with a finance background. They didn't want an AGM with a food and beverage background. So it's a bit of a unique role. And there's really not a lot of finance-focused AGMs out there in the industry. And so that kind of what led me to here. Pretty spectacular property. It's just east of San Francisco. It's the third largest revenue-generating country club in Northern California, behind the Olympic Club and Monterey Peninsula CC. And it's just a really special place.
the pictures I see that come from there are just spectacular. I can't wait to go visit it one of these days for sure. So next question for you guys, I'll start with you, Miles. I'd love to hear how obviously the COVID-19 has been impacting your club and what you're seeing and when you think that maybe you can get back to some sort of normalcy there.
So we first shut the club down on March 14th, shortly after the pandemic was announced on March the 11th, and put together a short-term operating plan that allowed us to get through until March 27th before the club was shut completely. At that point in time, we moved on to tackle as many essential maintenance and capital projects as we could, particularly those that are invasive to the member experience. So, for example, we resurfaced all of the parking lots. We've painted all of the walls inside and out. We've refinished all of our furniture. And at the same time, we've continued on with the design development phase of our ladies' locker room projects. Operationally, we very quickly got a to-go food operation up and running. We actually served over 2,000 people for Passover, which was a great accomplishment by the team. And we're averaging over 1,000 pickups a week cumulatively for to-go food and our grocery bag program services to the members. Next week, we get back out on the golf course. We're in touch with the mayor's office and the board of supervisors about when we might be able to get people back on the tennis courts. And we'll obviously mirror our reopening plans for what's happening beyond the walls of Hillcrest. When restaurants open in the local community, that will be us moving into phase 3 of our opening structure. That'll be a big impact on our club. We'll have a lot of people coming out, we're quite sure, and we're committed to getting that 100% right. The last one to fall for us, we think, will be the gym and the locker rooms. And we have absolutely no expectation that we'll be having private or club events anytime for the rest of this calendar year.
Yeah, so that's got to throw a real monkey wrench in your cash flow plans. How have you had to reshuffle things?
You know, cash has become king. Everyone's kind of looking at their burn rates. I know we were very quick to move on the staff side of it. We actually furloughed 60% of our workforce on April 1. That has obviously facilitated some uptick on the cash flows. Our receivables haven't slowed down, so that's been good. We have put a freeze on capital expenditures, but we continue to fine-tune our plans to execute the bigger projects as soon as there's a level of comfort amongst the finance committee and the board that we're past the worst of this.
Yeah. And it's something we're all dealing with in our own ways. It's and then it's a real shame, I think, that the PPP did not get extended to private clubs. Obviously, that was a big oversight in Congress. I don't think it was necessarily intentional, from what I've heard, but man, that really hurt. So, Jeff, how about you guys? How are you handling this crisis at Blackhawk, and what's it done? What have you had to do in terms of shuffling cash around?
Sure. So similar to Miles, we shut down middle of March as well when the governor put in the shelter in place. We did food and beverage takeout for a little bit, but unfortunately, a couple of our food and beverage employees contracted COVID-19, and we made the decision to completely close operations for the entire month of April. And we reopened on May 4th, this Monday. Golf and tennis are now allowed again in our county. And we've reinstituted the food and beverage takeout program. So our members definitely had cabin fever. We did 450 golf rounds on Monday, and we're typically closed on Mondays. I think our food and beverage takeout program is going to be huge. You know, Blackhawk obviously is a very large club. We have nearly 4,000 residents here behind the gates. So we're just going to kind of have to reinvent ourselves. We're kind of thinking we'll be a food and beverage grab and go style takeout powerhouse here for the time being until things loosen up. We kept our staff whole through April 12th. And then we did make the decision to do a large furlough. We furloughed about 240 of our hourly staff, and our leadership team did take a temporary pay cut. We were down to just administration and facility and golf maintenance for the month of April. But our new norm is going to require a new org chart. We have two of everything at Blackhawk, and it's kind of a blessing and a curse. We have 2 golf courses, we have 2 giant clubhouses, we have 2 swimming pools, we have 7 food and beverage outlets, we have the largest tennis complex in Northern California, and the operating expense associated with that is astronomical. So, unfortunately, I hate to get into any kind of culture of cost cutting, but the reality is we've lost millions of dollars in budgeted business just from banquet and event cancellations, the member dining restrictions, loss of any kind of outside charity group golf that we might have do on a Monday closure. And the only way to balance our model is to cut back. And so we'll probably keep food and beverage operations closed out of one of our clubhouses for the rest of the year. Which isn't the end of the world. We're saving about $500,000 a month, pulling some levers to offset the revenue shortfall. So we'll get through it. We'll still end the year with well over $1 million in cash. We're not going to have to touch a credit line. We were fortunate to enter this crisis in a position of strength. Whereas many clubs were not. So we're gonna get by. We'll be fine. During the closure, we did knock out a couple of mini capital projects. We finished a new grab and go cafe for our lakeside golf course. We got all new furniture for outdoor dining venues. We got some all new Toro agronomy equipment fleet. We painted nearly our entire clubhouse. But we are going to be deferring a significant amount of capital for the rest of the year to the tune of probably $700,000 for other agronomy projects and renovation planning to preserve our cash.
Yeah.
One of the nice things that Blackhawk did many years ago is they created, our capital dues are called depreciation dues. And so whatever our depreciation expense is every year, we make sure that our capital dues cover that. And any additional money we receive in initiation fees and transfer fees is just icing on the cake. It basically guarantees that the club will always have a positive net income every year. We've grown our net worth every year for the last decade because of that.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I think you're definitely in a pretty rarefied area there from what I've heard. You guys, sounds like you did the right things leading up to this, but there's so many clubs that unfortunately aren't in that situation. Now, you wrote an article on LinkedIn, Jeff, that I read, which I thought was really wonderful. Got a lot of acclaim from folks in the industry. Tell me how that came about and why you decided to write that.
Yeah, I kind of saw the writing on the wall. In my regional finance role for Truna, I traveled all over the country, bouncing back from West Coast to East Coast. And so I've been able to work with and see hundreds of clubs around the industry. And I've been a vocal proponent and supporter of club benchmarking for many years. And, 50% of the clubs in this country were barely scraping by, and 25% were already in a really dark place when COVID-19 hit. So, COVID-19 just fast-tracked and completely accelerated the inevitable with a lot of these clubs. And, I got a pretty large following on social media, on LinkedIn. So I just felt like I need to say something, that this was the wake-up call. Right after I wrote it, Club Benchmarking actually called me, and Ray Cronin laughed. And he said, "Jeff, this is everything I've wanted to say, but sometimes I keep my mouth shut because my name is Ray Cronin."
Yeah.
That's funny. Just for folks who hadn't read that, Jeff, what were some of the key points there? Maybe give us one or two of the real key lessons that you wanted to share with clubs.
Yeah, it's really just getting out of getting boards out of the nitty gritty of operations and complaining about things that really don't move the needle in the long term, and to really hop on that strategic train to ensure that they're using resources from the CMAA, from club benchmarking, and that you're building responsible budgets based upon what your club should be doing not necessarily what your club has done in the past. And getting club benchmarking's input. The reality is a lot of our boards and committee members, they're just well-intentioned volunteers, but they're not educated in private club finance. And so what they think should be done isn't exactly always what should be done.
Yeah.
And
you made a really good point that I thought was excellent, where you talked about clubs that think about the members they're going to get this year and build that into the budget. So they're basically planning for some sort of incoming number. And why do you think that that's such a mistake, Jeff?
Oh yeah, I've seen it so many times that it basically people build budgets that require a miracle in membership sales or outside events or catering just to balance the model. And the reality is, private clubs for the most part are break-even nonprofits. Any shortfall in revenue stream digs yourself into a hole that's very difficult to get out of. And it shouldn't require a miracle to hit your break-even plan.
Yeah, you can't rely on banquet sales and 20 new members every year to make sure you get to zero. That's really good advice there. And of course, you had a really nice quote from Michael Crandall, which I enjoyed in there. So definitely folks should read that. I'll link to that in the show notes here for this episode if you haven't already read Jeff's article. Peter, I want to turn it over to you for a moment here, because you're in dozens of boardrooms every year. How do you see this pandemic impacting break-even clubs who may not be in such a strong position like Blackhawk?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to have Jeff on, to be honest, is because I read his article as well. We got to know him a little bit. And to be honest, what a breath of fresh air, because I think a lot of controllers at clubs and general managers struggle with that dynamic that Jeff sounded very calm about, which is tell your board members that private club finance is kind of different from whatever business they're in. And you got a budget to be building reserves. And I've heard people say trying to land at break even is like trying to land a plane on an aircraft carrier. Like, how do you get the exact right number of new members to offset an attrition number that you don't even know what it is, right? And so we hear this everywhere, and it's very refreshing to hear Jeff put out some good information for club controllers and GMs. I mean, we're meeting with an increasing number of boards who are like Jeff describes. They're good clubs. They're in the top quartile in their towns. They're there's a lot of affluence, and so they're very fortunate in many ways. But they're trying to land the plane at break even. And with this COVID situation, your catering, wedding, banquet engine is kind of down. Maybe you're down a little bit from golf outings and things, but they're all looking at it saying, maybe we need an infusion of capital and some help with governance or management, professional management of our club. And that's obviously what we offer. Their biggest concern is, will we lose the culture of our club, right? And they're pleasantly surprised when they call a bunch of the presidents of our clubs who say, oh no, culture doesn't change at all. Everything is the way it was, but they got a lot of help with capital and kind of back office help from, people like Jeff and Miles can really run a fantastic club operation if you would just stay out of their way. But I think most board members think they got elected. Their job is to get in their way and tell those people what to do every day. And it's really not. It should be focused on the strategy.
I saw two big smiles come across Jeff and Miles' faces when you said that. That's really totally perfect. Miles, I want to turn it back over to you for a moment here. You've also got a strong background outside the hospitality. Outside of private clubs in other parts of the hospitality industry. What sort of lessons do you think that the private clubs will be able to take from what's happened there?
Well, I really appreciated you asking me that question, Gabe, because as someone who's very much a planner and focused on the future, I struggle to live in the moment, let alone reflect. And it was very helpful to reflect on my time in luxury hotels. During 9/11, I was actually managing in 5-star hotels in London. And one of the first decisions we made in the immediate aftermath of 9/11 is still one of my proudest management decisions to date. And we made the decision to zero rate all phone calls from the hotel. This was at a time when telephone revenue was actually a revenue stream for hotels. And most organisations have actually increased their rates to try and drive some additional cash into the hotels. By making the decision, we just try to empathise. We said, look, all we would want to do is talk to our loved ones and get home. The only way to do that is by phone. We were receiving messages 9 months, 12 months later from people who were just blown away by that act of kindness. We created raving fans in the middle of a crisis. And so in this environment, again, what we've tried to do is we've tried to empathise and we've tried to understand what the members and the team members' concerns are. And for the members, that concern has started with the staff. It's moved on to the member community. It's included the local community. So just trying to orchestrate this tide of goodwill and making sure that we're supporting one another, to Peter's point, sticking to our core values, maintaining the integrity of the club model, making sure that in an environment of incredible uncertainty that people know they can continue to count and rely on us, that we haven't changed. We've been here for 100 years. We'll be here for another 100 years. Our values are the same. We can't wait to get people back. So I think that the lesson in any hospitality setting is it's about empathy. It's about trying to understand what other people are going through, whether that's your colleagues or your clients. These are unprecedented times, very difficult times. But I think if you lean into your core values and you really try and prioritize the well-being of your community, we'll come out of this stronger.
Absolutely. What do you think the biggest lesson has been for you, Miles? What will you take out of this when we get back to some sort of normalcy?
I think I take so many things for granted now in terms of having a clearly defined mission, having core values that are well known and shared by my team, having decision-making matrices that actually have been proven to work in a crisis. I think one of the things that I'm going to be focused on is emergency preparedness. I think that those of us that haven't been affected by natural disasters in the past have probably not paid as much attention to that as we should. I've also got my team thinking about what did we take for granted in this crisis. We took water and power for granted. We took the ability to communicate with one another for granted. What happens if those things go away? So I think really planning, which is my bailiwick. I love planning. This is another opportunity not just to plan through the next 30 days, 90 days, 6 months, 12 months, all of which this is the most complicated budgeting season I've ever been through. The different scenarios we're modelling are unbelievable. The range of outcomes is pronounced. But we'll get through that. And then when we do get through that, we need to plan for the future. That's my big takeaway. Plan, plan, plan.
Yeah, that's a good one. Jeff, how about you, sir?
I've been really proud to work here, especially during this crisis. I've never seen so much unity among our leadership team, our staff, our board. The unity is what's got us through this. Blackhawk is an interesting case. Over 70 of our employees have worked here for over a decade, and 13 of them have been here over 30 years. So we don't have employees here at this club. It's family, and to have to furlough, hundreds of employees is absolutely heartbreaking. And our membership was so supportive. We started an employee donation fund that received well over $100,000. Just the mission of Blackhawk in general is very, very philanthropic. The founder that developed this place is the largest donor in U.S. history to the Smithsonian. He started a wheelchair foundation that's donated 940,000 wheelchairs to the less fortunate around the world. Wow. Everything that this club and community stands for is giving back and taking care of those who are in need. And so even outside of our employees, we've done so much to give back to the local community here in the East San Francisco Bay. We've donated thousands of pounds of food to local food banks. We've raised thousands of dollars for the food banks. It's just been really inspiring and an admirable gesture of seeing the unity that's come through this community. From a finance and capital standpoint, it's real. Like I said, this was a wake-up call, and it's definitely given the wake-up call to the industry that we got to be better on our fundamentals. And we need to build better budgets that are built on facts and benchmarks and strategic initiatives, and not just emotions and getting by for that break-even and NOI. There's a lot more that matters below the NOI line, and have many eyes on this budget template. One thing that came out of it, for myself was right now I took this downtime to kind of reinvent and rebuild Blackhawk's budget template. I'm taking everything I've learned over a decade from working for Troon in finance, everything I love from Blackhawk's budget template. I went to a budget seminar with Jeffrey Kriefel, the GM and COO of Congressional Country Club, and picked their brain on what Congressional does best. And what I'm trying to do is build like the world's best budget template for private clubs that will red flag and be conditionally formatted to prevent problems from happening, and to prevent boards from approving and finance committees from approving budgets that set up clubs for failure. I've kind of worked with my good friend of mine, Nick Gershner. He's the director of finance at Arizona Country Club in Phoenix. He was the former senior financial analyst for Troon at one point, and he's such a bright person. And we've just been bouncing ideas back and forth off each other, and that's kind of our side project. But the goal is to really help the industry move forward. So if something like this happens again in the future, not saying it's a virus, but something bad will happen to the industry in the future, clubs are better prepared.
Yeah, well said. Peter, how about from your perspective?
Yeah, no, you guys captured it well. The need for planning, the need for better budgeting, the generosity we see. In our business, we have 21 clubs, so we have enormous numbers of people who have responded in ways that is really heartwarming, right? Not only our members worrying about our staffs and worrying about local hospitals and all that, but our own staffs treating the club as something that is more than just a job, right? These staff members treat the club as their family also. It goes both ways. And to see the way the club is the center of people's lives and the way they respond in a chaotic situation like this, it's been really heartwarming. So we're fortunate to be in the business. I think all four of us on the call, we're fortunate to be in the industry that we're in at a time like this. And if we can all, like Jeff and Miles have said, we got to learn something from this in terms of being better at planning, better at budgeting, get the board and the staff better aligned, let's call it, in terms of who does strategy and who does operations. Maybe this is a moment that the industry moves forward in a big way.
Yeah, and that's the thing I've seen as well. I think it's been great to see collaboration amongst clubs. We've been doing these webinars and these discussions, and we're seeing that happen all over the industry. People from all over the world are coming together to share these ideas, and it's been really nice to see that happen. One last parting piece of wisdom, what would it be? We'll start with you, Miles. If you have one parting piece of wisdom for boards out there or managers, what would that be?
Again, I take so many things for granted. Listening to Peter talk about having a clear delineation of who's responsible for what, we have that. I think if we didn't have that in place during this crisis, we'd have been far less successful than we have been. There is a need for just some basics here: good planning, good budgeting, contingency planning, having clear lines of communication, a well-defined governance structure. Those things are constants no matter the environment. They probably become more pronounced in a crisis. I think the spirit of knowledge sharing needs to continue. I don't want to put words in Jeff's mouth, but I'm sure that anything he and I can share with the broader community would always be happy to do it. We're stronger as a group. We learn more as a group. It's a great group of people. It's a wonderful industry to work in, and it's a great group of people that we all get to serve every day as well. So maintain an attitude of gratitude, work together as a team, communicate, over-communicate, and then communicate some more. Lean into your core values and just plan hard. Have contingencies ready to go. This is going to happen again. It could be as soon as this fall. If you're not already planning for that, start planning now.
Yeah, I think that's right. We could go right back into a second wave here in the wintertime. So we can't take our foot off the gas pedal by any means. Jeff, one last parting shot.
I echo everything that Miles said. There's so many resources available to clubs. If your private club is not utilizing the resource of club benchmarking, you're definitely at a large disadvantage. use club benchmarking, use the National Club Association, use the CMAA. CMAA has far more depth of education and resources than any other service out there. Take advantage of it because they'll help you. And, we might be on the West Coast or the East Coast. This is one small fraternity and sorority. So it's been nice to see the collaboration and communication with each other. It's really brought the entire industry together. It's great.
Yeah. Yep. Peter, clubs out there who might feel like their back's up against the wall, they have they're running out of options. What would be, something that you might be able to help with?
Yeah. Well, first they should go see Jeff's article on LinkedIn, get his new budget template.
Definitely.
But yeah, they should go to our website, concertgolfpartners.com, poke around, and call me. My numbers are on there. I mean, we were happy to just do a half-hour consultation with board members who are wondering, what should we do? What are we missing? And oftentimes we point them to club benchmarking, or we point them to Troon, or we point them to Gabe, people like yourself who help with membership marketing, because not every one of these clubs is going to get a $5 or $10 million infusion of capital and all that, which is what we do. But sharing the resources, appreciate the spirit of you two guys joining today. I think that's the biggest takeaway of all.
Absolutely, guys. I really appreciate your time, everyone getting together on this, and thank you for just what you do for the industry, each and every one of you. What a great resource you three have been and continue to be. And wish you the best of luck here as we come out of this thing. And I can't wait to see what happens at Hillcrest and Blackhawk and the concert properties moving forward, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabe. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Gabe.
Yeah, thanks, Gabe.